Hello and welcome to the Anarchist Experience. My name is Robert Kruger. I'm your host, and I have Brent. Sorry, wow, Mr. Hazel. If you would, um, Brian is here from what is it? Your voice is a weapon. Is that right?
Yes, your voice is a weapon. Yes.
All right. So Brian is here to have a discussion with me about a variety of different topics. We're going to first start off with some information about Brian as a background, and then we're going to go into some debate about property and whether the anarchist perspective, being an ANCOM or an ANCAP position, respects someone's right to own the fruits of their labor, which one actually does reflect a true respect of someone's right to the full value of their fruits of their labor. So, in any case, Brian, I understand that you have a website that you discuss a variety of different topics. The most recent one was on torture.
Yes.
We had some declassified CIA torture report that came out, and there was a lot of response from people who were asked questions about how it is that torture should be used or shouldn't be used, and so on. I myself have recently had a conversation with a friend of mine where I was explaining that there are times where, yes, I think that torture would be justified, absolutely. And he was adamant that I was wrong. And then, of course, we have the statist position where torture is justified because of the falling
Right.
bodies off of the 9/11
Yeah.
thing there.
Yeah.
So, there's times where I think maybe torture could be justified, but there are times where torture obviously isn't justified. So why don't you go ahead and explain what it is that number one, this topic is about, and then I guess after we discuss this particular topic, I'd just like to we'll go into some things about what you're trying to achieve and where you're coming from.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think the whole idea of torture, at least as practiced by the state and the way that they do, is completely abhorrent. I could understand, in little situations. I don't know if somebody say kidnaps your daughter and you're trying to get them, to tell where she is, whatever. I'm not going to judge you for using whatever means necessary. However, in the way that it's used today, it's absolutely a disgusting practice, I would say, especially because you can just tell by looking at this torture report that these people, I don't think they truly cared about getting information. I think they were just some sick fucks. I think they got off to this. I think they were having fun because they stuck hummus in a detainee's rectum. They did all kinds of weird shit that I could not fathom why they would feel the need to do that. They threatened to rape a detainee's mother. These people are simply just sick in the head. You know what I mean? And I think another thing is the fact that none of these detainees were even given a trial. And I think about I don't remember the exact number, about like 14 of the known detainees or something like that were confirmed to be wrongfully held. So these were just simply innocent people being tortured. Anyways, but I think it's just sort of ironic that many conservative, diehard patriots that say that they're avid supporters of the Constitution and all that it states, that they would approve of such a thing because the Constitution. Well, I don't identify as a constitutionalist, obviously, but it does express the need for due process of the law before you're going to go and imprison or detain or torture somebody, right? But none of these detainees were given a trial. They were simply ransacked, and to support such a thing while claiming to support due process, you can't do so consistently. Um, so yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Well, obviously, when we're dealing with the idea of states, we have a mindset that people just are given when they're young. They're reared in this environment where us good, them bad.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. Us versus
and
them, for sure.
yeah, exactly. And we create this perspective that they're not even people in certain respects. And
Exactly. They're dehumanized.
yeah,
Exactly. And I think they do this in a variety of ways from, I mean, I don't know, you might not believe in, but I believe in personally false flag attacks. I believe those have been executed by the government in the past. I believe those have been executed by governments all throughout history. But also just propaganda comes in many shapes and forms. Sometimes it comes in movies. I don't know if you know about American Sniper. I completely believe that movie is just blatant war propaganda used to dehumanize the enemy, dehumanize Arabs overseas, and get people kind of fired up again. I've seen so much more rampant Islamophobia online lately because of that movie. And I just think it's blatantly being used in the government's favor to paint Western imperialism in a more positive light. You know what I mean? And to sort of make us look like the bad guys. Us good, them bad. That whole mentality, and that sort of mentality is perpetuated throughout all sorts of memes. You know what I mean?
yeah. Just to recap the movie that you think that really reflects this pervasive imperialism and tries to give credence to it is what?
Is the American Sniper?
The American Sniper.
Yeah,
Okay,
the American. You haven't heard of it? Oh,
I've
it's
never seen it.
yeah, it's a movie. Sorry about that. Yeah, The American Sniper. It's a movie that just recently came out. It's about this. Do you know about Chris Kyle? He was supposedly the most lethal soldier in U.S. history. Actually, Ron Paul talked about him. It's funny. Ron Paul stirred up quite a bit of controversy because he said that see, Chris Kyle went to a shooting range with his buddy that had PTSD, and his buddy ended up going crazy and shooting Chris Kyle. So right after that, I'll admit this might have been um, a little bit insensitive to come out like this right after that happened. But Ron Paul said the death of Chris Kyle seems to confirm that he who lives by the sword dies by the sword. And of course, that caused so much controversy, and he had to do a formal apology to the family and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, so that movie is about this man, Chris Kyle, who had more confirmed kills than any American sniper throughout history and all that kind of stuff. So
Well, certainly, Chris Kyle. If he was a sniper and killed, I don't know, let's say 1,000 people, he's a pittance in comparison with the people who pull the button for the dropping of the bomb, whether it be nuclear or even just a conventional weapon.
yeah,
Uh,
most
you know, we're talking about, okay, wow, I killed 1,000 people over the course of say 8 years, 10 years, and wow, I killed 10,000 people with one click. So
yeah,
congratulations, you're the biggest killer. Okay, sure, yeah, right.
yeah,
Um, so when it comes down to it, though, the thing that is, I guess, the most disconcerting is the underlying thought process that goes behind how people evaluate each other's humanity, their ability to change their perspective so that them are not us, them are to be.
they're less than human.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're not human. Exactly, dehumanizing people, and it's actually there's a series called The Road to Tyranny, which is available on YouTube. That if people haven't checked it out, you might want to check it out, where they go into the Milgram experiment and the idea that if you perceive that there are these others that are out there that do not have um, the same characteristics that you are, you cannot empathize with them, and therefore you do not feel any sort of sympathy or empathy for what they're going to go through with your actions. And
right.
so it's an important thing for us to understand is to how much government interferes with the natural process of a being's development. Um, as we grow up as children, we initially start off having empathy. We can actually see that even animals can come up with an understanding that this particular creature that's near me is going through pain and suffering, and they will like cuddle with them, or at least lick them, or give them some sort of comfort and effort to try to you know give them some sort of help that
Absolutely. Yeah.
they can provide, and it's just something that's innate to a human being to be understanding of another person's suffering. I believe that there was a study that was done not too long back that's got some great visuals on it, where you'll see that there's a very young child who attempts to console someone who is crying by reaching out, by trying to, bring them to them, and give them a sense of camaraderie that they're here for them. And it's, to me, it's part of the human condition as being a person who understands that pain is not happy. We don't like pain, so
Yeah.
let's try to make more happy.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how it. That's it. Because we understand that if we were going through the same thing, it would hurt us. We would not like that. So we can understand, that's how that's how manners in general in society, I think, kind of arise. That's the reason why I'm not, going out and killing people right now. Because one, I have a conscience, but I also the reason that I understand why that is, in my opinion, wrong is because if that were happening to me, I would certainly, I would not enjoy that. I would, that would terrify me. So I can sort of, that's how I can have empathy. That's how I can feel for another, and that's why I can treat others the way, like the golden rule, the way that I would want to be treated. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
well, you know what? You brought up the golden rule. I'd love to go into that one. I have a
Yeah.
pro- I have a problem with the golden rule. I hate the golden rule. I think the golden rule
Oh,
is crap. Actually,
dude.
it's not crap. It's just really less than adequate. It's actually not really not
Well,
good.
yeah, I mean, I guess a rapist could say, I want to be treated this way, so I'm going to go off and rape somebody, obviously. But then again, I'm sure that rapist would not enjoy being raped,
Right. Well,
unfortunately.
we're not going to talk about rapists. Let's just go over a couple of different
Okay.
options. All right. Let's say that you've got a masochist, a sadomasochist who enjoys receiving pain and enjoys giving pain.
So,
According to the golden rule, it is upon him to be a decider for his actions. His actions are going to be based upon his perspective, and he will say, "Well, I would like to receive pain, therefore I should deliver pain
true.
unto others."
Very true.
And so the things. Let's go over the golden rule real quick. The golden rule says, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." All right. So first of all, it's prescriptive. It requires that you do something, which it is in essence a positive rights claim instead of a negative rights claim. It is incumbent upon you that you must act to resolve whatever issue instead of abstaining. You
Right.
cannot be Switzerland in the golden rule. You have to be Germany in the golden rule because obviously, yeah. So let's say I'm going to go ahead with the Nazi perspective on the golden rule. Well, the race of the species of humanity is paramount importance to the production of goodness around the world. We want to have humanity proceed and succeed and so on. And obviously, we would want to have those who are the most fit to do so um, take the bull by the horns, so to speak. So I would want, even if I were part of a subset of the species human that is a small component, if I am a weaker part of this group, then well, go ahead, and I should go ahead and die. In nature, that's what happens. That's how nature works. Is that you call the weak, and you take the wheat from the chaff. So you want to have the good stuff. And so, as a Nazi, I completely could see, hey, all right, well, let's go ahead and exterminate all the people who are inferior and so on.
Yes.
And that's theoretically following the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule was used as a justification for the Crusades. If I were a person who valued life eternal after death, then I understand that that's what I would expect other people to do for me, is to take care of my soul. So if I am a non-believer that is suffering in sin, that I should be released from this sin and I should be brought back into the light and given eternal life through the Crusades, and so they should just go ahead and kill me. This is a bad justification. So number one, it requires your action instead of inaction, and number two, it is based upon the initial person instead of what the recipient of what their action is going to be in their perspective. It takes no consideration of what it is that the other person would want done to them. Now, there is another rule. I don't know if it's the platinum rule or the silver rule, where, and some people might say it's the non-aggression principle, where it says, do not do unto others what they would rather you not do to them. And to me, that's a far more moral position. Is if all things being equal, we're not talking about trying to seek redress for a wrong. We're not talking about anything else like that. We're talking about just two people interacting. It is best that you not do something to someone that they didn't want you to do to them.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty reasonable perspective, but in any case, you got me a little, a little bit pushed on the Golden Rule. I hate it.
Oh, no problem. I'm not a Christian, so I'm not offended. Don't worry.
That's all right. Yeah. Being religious isn't exactly my forte either, but certainly I respect that there are a lot of people who are religious who will come to the understanding that anarchy is not chaos. Anarchy is actually order.
Yes, I judge nobody by their religion. I judge people by the content of their character, and it's just so funny because I have plenty of Christian friends, I have plenty of Muslim friends, and it seems like most of the time my Christian friends are trying to convince me that my Muslim friends are evil, and it's usually not really the other way around, surprisingly. But I'm sure there are some Muslims out there that would tell me that, but none of none of the ones that I have met. But anyways, they'll point to stuff in the Quran and tell me, well, that this is really messed up, and I'm like, yeah, well, that is messed up. But then I point to something in their holy book, and then they're like, well, they'll just jump through hoops to try to justify that. And many times it'll be in the Old Testament, and I hate it so much when they're just simply, they write it off as, oh, it's in the Old Testament, it doesn't count. Really, this whole half of your holy book doesn't count simply because of are you serious? Anyways, but that's a whole other topic. We don't gotta dive into religion here.
All right. Well, just a quick I don't remember if it's actually one jot, not one tittle, is from the Bible, but in essence, Jesus said that I come not to break the law, I come to fulfill it. And yeah, if you like the Old Testament, the way it's written,
yeah,
Jesus is your guy. He's here to bring the sword for you. Congratulations. All right. Yeah. So I'd like to actually go back into just a thing that we were talking about before we came on the show. Your evolution as far as becoming an anarchist. How did that occur?
Yeah, well, I started out see, I had very Christian conservative parents. Very, I was raised under the Bible Belt, so naturally when I began, independently thinking for myself, I sort of just chose the opposition without really thinking anything through. I became I really didn't know what I was talking about. All I could really do was regurgitate slogans and stuff. I started out as sort of a lefty socialist anarchist. I didn't identify as an ANCOM. I don't think I really had even heard of anarcho-communism, but I did like the idea of socialism and, you know, sort of mixed with anarchism, whatever. I didn't, like I said, I had no idea what I was talking about. So that was my freshman year of high school, so you can imagine.
Well, what's the most attractive thing at that point for you about socialism?
Oh, that's the thing though. I barely really thought about it. I would get on Tumblr, I would see some edgy pictures, and I would be like, yeah, I'm an anarchist. You know what I mean? Like I didn't really I didn't think deeply about economics, about socialism, about, you know, government, all that kind of stuff. I was just kind of like regurgitating, you know, capitalism is evil and, you know, rich work, poor profit. That's really all as far as I went with it. You know what I mean? So I didn't really think that much. From there, I went from there to sort of I kind of flipped a 180. I went from there to like Ron Paul, constitutionalist libertarian, and then from there, I think you know him, Mike something, SH
Franklin.
something. Yeah, I saw one of his videos about anarcho-capitalism. I had never heard that term in my life, but I watched it and I was like, oh, yay, I can be an anarchist again. Still kind of, I was definitely much more well-read than I was, you know, my freshman year of high school, but, you know, I still didn't quite, you know, my process was not yet complete, I guess you could say. So I went from there, and I just remained an ANCAP for quite a while, and eventually I crossed over to mutualism, which essentially, well, I guess you could say I went from there to just being sick of the word capitalism and kind of just dropping it, considering myself an anarchist without adjectives type of deal, you know, and I went from there to mutualism, which mutualism is essentially, you know, I still consider myself a market anarchist. I consider myself an individualist. However, I have a preference for, you know, a preference for socialism via free association. You know what I mean? So things like co-ops, you know, things like, you know, voluntary communes. I don't want to force anybody to live the way that I want to live, but I would have a preference for, you know, I would so much rather, you know, I work at Taco Bell right now. I would so much rather work in a co-op than in Taco Bell. You know what I mean? It's sort of just a lifestyle preference to me. There are some little things that ANCAPs and mutualists sort of fight over, like things like absentee ownership. Now, obviously, I believe that if you leave to travel abroad, your house is still your house, you know, obviously. However, if there's, say, land that's just sitting there with no intention of being used, and there's one guy with a piece of paper that says, I own this land, and he's never going to do anything with it, well, I believe that it's not wrong. I believe, you know, I think ANCAPs also, they believe in what's called homesteading, I think, for legitimate property.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
basically says that
The idea
there's,
that I would have a piece of paper that says this is mine, we would say, "Wow, you're claiming dibs. Congratulations." It means nothing because you know I can point at the moon and say that's mine.
right,
Uh,
right,
yeah.
exactly.
So
Um, yeah. So you know, obviously, you know, we believe that occupancy and use is a good basis in a stateless society for, you know, property rights. You know, so there's land out there being completely unused. Nobody's doing anything. Well, I'm gonna go build a house. I'm gonna go, you know, grow some food. You know, and therefore I believe that, you know, that is how I'm claiming this property. I'm not just writing on a piece of paper and saying, oh, I own this. You know what I mean?
I'm not going to claim dibs. I'm not going to just say,
Yeah.
"Oh wow, that's mine."
Right. Right.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that I guess that kind of, I mean, is that where you finally ended up? Is mutualism, and it kind of
Yes.
gives us a segue into the debate about whether an ANCAP position or an ANCOM position actually accepts that somebody should own the fruits of their labor. Now, um, the ANCAP position is one of this. It is a position that says if there is some area of land, some resource that exists out there, and somebody goes out and manipulates that resource and turns it into something new, congratulations. Your efforts have created something that did not exist prior to your actions, and therefore you have first right of ownership or claim over how it is used.
Right.
And this would be like, I'm going to go out into the wilderness and I'm going to make a house. Okay, congratulations, you now own a house.
Yeah.
This is your home, and nobody can come into your home without your permission. In fact, you have the right to use violence to prevent people from entering into that home, and you can tell people to get out. And if they don't, then you can use violence to get them to move out. Obviously, you're going to use the minimum amount of violence necessary to make that happen. But whether it's grabbing somebody by the ear and dragging, making them go out the door, or whether it is I'm going to pull a gun on you because you're physically superior to me, so I have to use a tool to
Right.
make things happen. Um, so then the uh,
Right. Yeah.
the next step would be that all right, well, I'm going to work the land, I'm going to work the materials that I've got, the resources that I've gone out into nature and you know taken from a non-owned, non-claimed um, point, and I'm going to use them to do stuff with it. So let's say I go ahead and the house that I'm going to build is on the mountainside, and it includes a tunnel that goes down into this mountainside, and there's iron that's there, iron ore. And I take the iron ore and I bring it out and I smelt it and I turn it into steel.
Hmm.
At this point, the steel is mine, and I can go ahead and do what I want with it. Because nobody else has done this.
Right.
Their their claim that, well, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't go out and just go take some rocks and do stuff whatever you want with it. That's not fair. Those are all of our rocks. Is the ANCOM position as far as I am concerned. Um, they deny that anyone can take anything out of anywhere and use it however they see fit, unless they get 100% consensus, or maybe not necessarily 100% consensus, but consensus in some fashion.
Right.
And
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure that I'm sure there are. I'm sure you've spoken to some ANCOMs that sort of hold that position to be true. However, I don't believe that all ANCOMs are believe that. I believe that there are many ANCOMs that would simply consider this iron ore that you have gone out and you have mined yourself and done something with it. I believe they would consider that your personal property. And really, I think that ANCOMs, ANCAPs, mutualists, I think many areas in which we disagree are essentially just semantic disagreements. You know what I mean? Like mutualists and ANCOMs, they consider themselves. We consider ourselves anti-capitalist, but that's only because we believe that the term capitalism was originally coined by socialists as a pejorative that was describing basically a form of statism with privilege and class and state granted advantages in the market and rule by capitalists. You know what I mean? And so it's really I don't think that you and I disagree a whole lot, and I don't think that I think that ANCAPs and ANCOMs and mutualists have a lot more in common than they let on. I think that there are sort of in the ANCAP movement. This has been stated many times by many mutualists and market anarchists and stuff that there are anarcho capitalists, and then there are anarcho-capitalists, essentially. So because there are those in the movement, they might be few, but you know that are sort of little more than apologists for big corporations and such. And I know, being a former ANCAP, I know that you know not all ANCAPs even believe in the idea of a corporation, because a corporation can only exist through the state, you know. But anyways, I think there are then anarcho-capitalists that are just sort of I don't believe that they realize what everybody else thinks of when they use the term capitalism, or their definition of it. And so, like I said, it's a little more than semantic disagreements in terms of, say, personal versus private property. You know, mutualists hold, and so do most ANCAPs hold, that you know, occupancy and use is a good basis for private property or personal property in a stateless society. But many mutualists don't believe in using the term private property, because Pierre Joseph Proudhon, in his time, he used private property, the term private property, to describe property that was taken from individuals by the state and given to corporations. So, therefore, you know, like I said, semantic disagreements. So what might be private property to you would likely be considered personal property by an ANCOM or a mutualist.
Okay, well, I guess the thing that is imperative that we do is actually describe what it is that we are talking about. What are the terms? What do they mean? So when it comes to capitalism, um, I would say that the standard is basically that the ownership, the final decision-making authority over a rivalrous piece of matter may be or should be owned by an individual rather than a state, a government, a
Sure.
collective, a group of people, whether it be everyone or everyone in proximity or whatever it happens to be, should be owned by the person who actually changed it into something that did not exist until their action. That the person then who owns this can, you know, take what actions that they see fit with that property. Now, it's, you know, the common definition is that it's an economic and political system in which a country's trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than the state dictating the plan and goals and so on as to how it is being used. Um, so I guess the big thing is that the difference between an NCAP and an NCOM would be that we as NCAPs would say, all right, you've converted X into Y, and now it is something that never existed before you did any action to it. You now have complete final authority over it, and assuming that the original appropriation of the X was fine. I mean, there was no, you know, you weren't taking, I don't know, let's say that we all had a communal area where there was this pathway that we all walked down to the well to get our water, and everybody was using the well, and so now suddenly you go ahead and jump in and you're going to build a road upon this stretch of land and start charging a toll. Well, no, sorry, that's been claimed already. It's already been assumed that everybody is using this area. It's not up for, you know, claim. But if you go out into the wild, if you go out into the
Right.
nobody pays any attention to it, and you convert it into something, well, that something didn't exist, and now you own it. Okay, fine.
Right. See, that is a great view. I think I was actually just reading something sort of like that. I was actually hoping to mention it here. I was reading in a book. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Considering the circumstances, it might not be best to bring it up right now because of this whole thing with Brad Spangler. But there's this book, Markets Not Capitalism. You might have heard of it. It was a book written by Center for a Stateless Society, which, like I said, Brad Spengler was a part of. Now, obviously, since all this controversy has arisen, they've disassociated themselves from him. But he actually does have an article in there, but that's not the one that I'm addressing. I'm addressing an article. It was about. It is called something like a plea for public property, and what it was talking about was true public property, not government owned property, but a commons. A commons, because really, it seems as though you could say natural law and commons kind of go hand in hand.
Sure.
So basically, a commons for people to, because we don't want every pathway, every road just being controlled by a person, because obviously that was, and I don't believe many people believe that that's what ANCAPs advocate, and some might, but I believe that many ANCAPs kind of have a sense of why it's necessary to have commons for people to just travel, because otherwise, your right to freely roam the earth and to travel is very much impeded if every little pathway and roadway is just controlled by an individual and whatnot. And so, yeah, I believe ANCAPs and ANCOMs alike have a sense of what commons are and why they're necessary. You know what I mean? However, but yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying in that, you go out, you find something, you make something, it's yours. And I don't believe that all ANCAPs are opposed to that. I believe that ANCAPs are opposed to the idea that, in this, I was going to say capitalist, but I realized, you wouldn't consider it capitalist. But in this cronyist state that we're in right now, in this economy that we're in, resources are very, very much monopolized by corporations.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can definitely
Right?
agree on that.
So, yeah, so that's why, an ANCOM is very much opposed to the idea that this corporation, which did not legitimately obtain any of the property that it has, but rather it was granted through state privilege, it's using all these resources, claiming it as theirs. An ANCOM would go and say, no, that's not yours, that's ours. You know what I mean? You didn't obtain that through legitimate means, you obtain that through state privilege. You know what I mean? And monopolization and unfair advantage in the market.
A dibs claim that is, backed up by, well, I'll shoot you,
Right.
kind of claim. Yeah. Well, all right. So, I mean, what a lot of times that I'll hear is when incoms or mutualists will come in and they'll bring up the idea of this thing called the enclosure. Um, Basically, in England, for our viewers, in England there was a time where there was a bunch of land that was out there that was primarily determined by the king and by his viceroys, by his dukes, by his various different members of the court, and these people were considered to be the rulers over their areas and had ownership over those areas, and you couldn't kill um, a deer on you couldn't kill a deer on the king's land, and if you did, then you were stealing from the king and so on. Um, and then you had dukes and duchesses and all these different areas that were segregated out there. You have your different levels of so on, and then at some point in time there came a point where um, there was a parliament that was created. There was this interaction between political entities that created all sorts of options and things, and then you started to see that there were merchants who would manipulate those things through financial trickery, basically
Yeah.
lobbying. And
Mm-hmm.
what happened is that these people were granted a claim over these particular sections of land, and it was changing it from being this relatively unenforced right of kingdoms, or dukedoms or princedoms or whatever that were
Yeah.
normally understood to be, well, this is the hierarchy that exists, and it was an attempt to actually move forward towards more mutualistic or more socialistic perspective, where, all right, well, we're not going to have the king rule over all that land and it's all his. Instead, we're
Mm.
going to give it out to a bunch of people. All right, well, that's a kind of a good move in the right direction theoretically,
Right.
but what actually was occurring there was that, all right, well, we used to have claim dibs, and now we're going to hand out dib markers to every single person, in this particular group, and they're going to have dibs over these particular things. And it's still a dibs claim. It's a well, because I'm divine right of kings, I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and say you own this, that, and the other thing. And it's nothing to do.
But yeah, what should be specified is what should be held in value is occupancy and use, right?
Well, no, that's the income position, and I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
It's not about um, use. It's not about um, continued occupancy. Occupancy and use is not ownership. That's stewardship. All right. There's two different concepts. You have stewardship and you have ownership. Stewardship is, oh, you're in charge of it. I mean, you're using it. You're doing stuff with it. Go for it. You're the steward of what's going on with it. But as soon as you abdicate for that position, then it's back for anybody to claim stewardship over. And you yourself has talked about the idea that, well, if I go on a trip, a vacation, I'm going to be gone for a month or two to visit all the wonders of the world, whether it be China or Australia. I'm going to go on my trip, and I expect to come home and find that, wow, nobody's been living and squatting in my land. Nobody has.
Well, that's not what I was trying to say. What I was trying to say is, in terms of land that is unclaimed, and land that is not being, it's just there, nothing, nobody's doing anything with it. Maybe somebody has a piece of paper and saying, well, dibs, you know, that's illegitimate. I'm not saying that you do not own your house simply because you are leaving it temporarily. I do not, hold that position.
Right.
But I do believe that if you say, well, look at that patch of land over there, I own it, dibs.
Yeah.
No,
Nobody
that's not.
expects that to be
No,
true,
no, yeah, no dice. That's not yours. You're
except for
not.
statists.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I don't believe that you don't own your house just simply because you're temporarily leaving it. That's
So,
sort of.
but that's not based on occupancy and use. Okay,
Sure,
obviously.
but I mean in terms of legitimately acquired property. I'm sure
All
you
right, well, we're going
acquired.
to talk about legitimately acquired then. Let's say what makes something legitimately acquired. Now, if you go out into the wild and turn a plot of land into a homestead, you and I are both going to agree that that's legitimate, and we're clear on that. I mean, you've said so yourself. Obviously, it's yours. Okay, that's great. But if you leave it and you go off and do some other thing, and then you come back to it, should you expect that it's yours?
Yes, I do. I believe that, unless you intend to simply abandon it entirely, if you still have obviously an intention of coming back, and to me, and I think many ANCOMs would hold that that is your personal property, your house, that's
Oh,
your
sure.
personal property.
And they
Yeah,
would. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
it's still yours if you temporarily leave it.
Oh, sure.
However, if there's some abandoned building in a city, that nobody's using, nobody owns except the banker, then I don't believe that it's necessarily wrong squatting in that regard. I don't believe is necessarily wrong.
Okay, so how familiar are you with a what's it called adverse claim?
I'm not very familiar with this.
Okay, So an adverse claim is somebody who moves into a property and they say, "Well, no, this is mine," and but you're like, wait a minute, I built this house, it's mine, and well, I'm living here, it's mine, and so there's this adverse claim that goes back and forth, right? When it comes to the ANCOM position, well, the claim is that there's some sort of abandonment that occurs because you are not in occupancy or use. And so then the ANCAP position is, well, yes, there is a dispute, and there is some claim that there was not a significant action by the owner of the home to make sure that their claims were continued to be represented. And now we're going to go to arbitration, and we're going to discuss what happens with this property. Um, Common law typically occurs where they say you can go out to a place of land, you will set down your markers, and you will plan on doing something with the land over a period of time. And if you've not done anything with the land over the course of a year, if that year has passed and nothing has been done with the land, well, your claim is no longer valid. Similarly, the claim that if you've abandoned some property over a period of time, a certain amount of time has passed, where you have had zero interaction with it, that's fine, unless there's an adverse claim. And then there's another person who has moved into the location, and common law has determined, well, there's a certain period of time where if you have had some squatters living in your home and you haven't been there, it's about a year, where, sorry, you didn't even pay attention to it for a freaking year. It's your fault. You're bad. Sorry, you lost it. You just let it return to a state of unowned, occupancy, and so then that's not really the difference, I suppose, between ANCOMs and ANCAPs, because I mean both ANCOMs and ANCAPs can realize that there's an abandonment issue where if there's an adverse claim, that there will be some sort of return back to unknown.
This is and this is not. This is because see we're talking about a stateless society here, so it's because it's that type of thing. Keeping track of your property, or occupying it or using it, etc. That is a good way to say, in a stateless society where there's no government to say, this is yours. In a stateless society, that is a good way to ensure that property is
Yours forever.
That property is acknowledged as yours, and that you are keeping track of it, etc. It's not necessarily to say that okay. It's not necessarily saying that there's an abandoned whatever, but you still have it, but you're not using it at all. It's not necessarily to saying that, well, I believe that somebody should come and take that. It's more like saying, dude, this is a stateless society. You need to ensure that that you're continuing to ensure that property is acknowledged as yours, and that you're protecting it, and that there's nothing's happening to it,
Right.
And so that's why occupancy and use is a good rule of thumb in a stateless society, to ensure that the individual is not robbed of
Well, sure. I mean, obviously, when it comes down to it, in an ANCAP society, we're going to have security guards. We're going to have somebody who's going to come over to you and say, "Hey, get off here. It's not yours.
Sure.
It's Bob's. Bob's on a trip to Bora Bora, so he's coming back. Chill.
Sure.
It's not yours. Get out. Go on. Move on your way." Now, this is where the thing goes crazy, though. I have some property that I've made a homestead out of, and I converted into a ranch, and I have cattle, and I take care of my cattle and so on, and then I put an offer out there for people to come to me and say, let's work together, let's cooperate and create an opportunity for both of ourselves where I'm going to go ahead and take care of your cattle or your sheep or your um, factory on
Hmm.
your behalf, and in exchange, um, I'm going to give you a certain amount of whatever.
Hmm.
And maybe it might be that you're going to give me a flat fee, a certain amount of money per hour in order to do this. And in exchange, I'm going to give you all the fruits of my labor. Now, this in an ANCAP society is a perfectly legitimate, exchange. I'm saying I'm going to guarantee you that every single hour that you work between, these hours and blah blah, I'm going to guarantee you that I'm going to give you, let's say, $8 per hour.
Hmm.
But now
No.
you're going to go ahead and start using my
Well,
tools and doing your thing, and and so on. It's still my stuff. I could have just as simply done the work
yeah.
myself, but we came up with a mutually beneficial exchange. Why is
Yeah,
that so
I don't
hard
believe
to obey?
there's. Yeah. See, I don't believe that there's anything wrong with that. Like I said, hello, you still there?
Yeah, I'm
Hello.
here. Yeah, I'm here.
Video disappeared. Okay. See, for me, I completely believe that people should live their lives the way they want to live them. That means they can jump off a cliff with it. People can do whatever they want with their own lives. They should be able to live how they prefer to live. And I do not believe there's anything wrong per se with somebody who is okay with working for a wage. I don't believe that I should go and rob them of their right to do that because they do have a right to do it. They have the right to do whatever they want, without me telling them what to do. So I don't believe there's anything wrong with that type of voluntary transaction. It is just a personal preference for me that I would definitely prefer cooperation over wage and hierarchy and so on.
Right, but
Um,
the thing is that I have already presupposedly have a right of ownership. All right, and somehow if I offer other people a chance to use those resources that I own, and I give these people a chance to use those resources in exchange for, I don't know, whatever sort of trade that occurs. And in all likelihood, it's going to be something along the lines of, I'm going to give you $40,000 per year.
mhm,
You're going to go ahead and do the things that you're going to do with it, and everything that comes out of that is going to be mine.
mhm.
You're guaranteed 40,000. I'm guaranteed everything you make. Okay. Maybe somebody finds that acceptable. Maybe somebody doesn't. If they don't do the deal. They're not participating. They go off and do their own thing.
Yes, I completely agree. I believe that voluntary transactions in general are. I still hold that principle from my former ANCAP days. I just, I think we agree. Oh, I think we agree a little bit too much to really have a very lively debate. But I do believe in that all voluntary transactions are legitimate. I do.
Right. So, okay. So let's just say we take the income position, which is another one that I just love. That, look, we have this amount of land that's going to be available that's productive land. We can't really use the Antarctic shelf. It's just not really usable. We can't use land that is on a volcano. It's just not usable. So there's only a certain amount of land that's usable. And what capitalists are all going to do is they're going to take all that land and own it. And that's going to leave nothing for all the future generations that are going to come along and that are going to say, this is mine. I'd like to go ahead and pursue my own interests and so on, because everything is owned. There's nothing for anybody who would like to venture on their own and pursue their own interests. So what capitalism does is it forces scarcity upon the society. It forces people to interact in that capitalist society, and if you don't work in a capitalist society, you'll starve. Now, this is a common critique. It's completely bunk, and I'll explain why. When it comes to capitalism, capitalism is a promoter of innovation, of a methodology that is providing a more expedient solution to the problem at hand. If you can deliver water to somebody for less, then your profits increase. If you can deliver satisfaction in any particular realm, whatever that satisfaction is, for less, profits increase. So you're incentivized to find more efficient means by which to provide these particular products or services.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if if you look at what happens with land, the amount of land that it takes to provide, let's say, for example, housing, the quality of housing, the amount of land required to produce housing, actually decreases as a capitalist society is involved. There are going to be high-rise, high-quality condominiums that have an amazing amount of amenities that people really like. They're like, wow, I've got all these cool things that I can do in my home, and I've got this fairly spacious, condominium where I can go from this gigantic room to that gigantic room and so on. Maybe even I have my own floor of a skyrise. Doesn't matter. I mean, bottom line is that we can create vertical structures that actually accomplish this just fine. And we find that it produces a desirable result for the consumer, that people want to be able to live in a metropolis where they have access immediately to all the entertainment and all the social interaction that they're seeking right around the corner, that they can just go to the Met or to the opera or whatever right there. Boom, it's immediately available. And the amount of space that is required on land shrinks. Okay, now let's take a look at agriculture. When it comes to agriculture, the amount of space of land that's actually required to produce the same amount of food that we used to have versus, like oxen and, plowing the land using beasts of burden versus using modern technology, well, again, this is going to be a result of the capitalist idea that, yes, we're going to compete, and I'm going to come up with a better way of delivering more for less.
Right.
And so I'm going to increase the amount of productivity for the same amount of land, or even less land, and the amount of land necessary to produce all the things that we're needing decreases. In fact, capitalism shrinks every single requirement that is involved in their production. Here are there's an easy one that's very, very clear. If you had to spend, let's say, 100 barrels of oil in order to do your product, and you could figure out a way to do 70 barrels of oil to make your product, is there some sort of benefit to a capitalist to do it with 70? Oh yeah, there is. It's called profit. And it incentivizes somebody to be more efficient.
To use less.
Right. And become more, to shrink the amount of waste that they have, or the amount of inputs that are demanded or required. So, an interesting thing that happens in first world countries is that people do the same thing about shrinking their, their spread, the amount of inputs that are required in order to maintain their happiness, even. Happiness actually decreases the amount of inputs necessary as we have capitalism effected. Happiness used to require that you have 6 kids, because in order to be happy as a 60-year-old person, you have to have 4 or 5 kids who are working the land, providing you food, providing you shelter, making sure that the gutters are clean, and so on. But as that modern technology has occurred, wow, look at that! I've got all this stuff taken care of for me through efficient means, and I don't really want to have as big of a family anymore. And so you'll see, like, the number of kids that people are producing decreases as well. So the amount of land decreases, the amount of waste decreases, the amount of consumption decreases. All these things are benefits to what it is that we're looking for.
And we're
And
talking about a truly free market here, yes.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even
Right.
with the statism thing that goes on, I mean, obviously, when we have a state, it's going to taint everything. We can't have a completely free market in our current environment. It just doesn't work because there are so many people who believe you have to have government. But if we look at the components of what capitalism has done, all these things have been decreased as far as land usage, as far as waste, and so on. So when an ANCOM says to me that we have a society, capitalism will create this scarcity, it'll increase scarcity. I don't understand where they're coming from. I mean, how is it that capitalism increases scarcity? Obviously, yeah, there are going to be people who are going to be like, oh, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go ahead and hoard up all these diamonds and make sure nobody gets any more diamonds, and we're going to go ahead and try to trick them to give us more money because we've gotten them to throw those rings on them girls. Look, bottom line, diamonds are not a capitalist system. There's no capitalism involved with diamonds. Diamonds are entirely designed over the South American cartel, which is enforced by a government. Okay, South African, sorry. So
Right, yeah.
that's not capitalism. Okay, so let's actually look at capitalism. What capitalism is like, I don't know. Let's look at um, vision correction surgery. Vision correction.
Yeah.
You compare vision correction in the medical world. Vision correction's prices have dropped and dropped and dropped. The quality has gone up and up and up. Government intervention, practically nothing compared to, let's say, I don't know, heart bypass surgery. Obviously, heart bypass surgery is a significant manipulation of the organs. It requires various different technological advancements and so on. We have a ton and ton and ton of government monies going into heart bypass surgery. Costs continue to rise. Quality is stagnant. Maybe it's gone up a smidge as far as quality.
Yeah.
But prices have just insanely risen. And then you look at the almost non-regulated environment of vision correction, and prices have dropped dramatically, increased dramatically. So the whole claim that there's not going to be any amount of land available for us to, come on into as young, whippersnappers who are just entering the marketplace, that there's not going to, I have no opportunities, no choices other than entering the capitalism marketplace, that there is a systemic, structural violence perpetuated upon me, forcing me to participate in your system, is bullshit. There's going to be more land and more land and more land if we actually have capitalism.
Right, right. And see, that's where I, like I said earlier, when I was talking about just small semantic disagreements, because really I agree with much of the things that you're saying, because I do believe in a truly free market, and obviously we both agree that what we have today is not a truly free market. But see, I would say that today we have capitalism, and I make a distinction between the two, because I think that capitalism is the most common word used to describe the system in which we have today. And there are different little microorganism, the little no, that wasn't the right word. The little tidbits, little parts in our society and our system which are completely unfettered, which are voluntary, and which are great. And you would look at those transactions and say that's capitalism. And others would look at the fact that we have all this monopoly, all this state-granted privilege, all this crap that we have in our society, they would look at that and say, that's capitalism. It's a little more than a little semantic disagreement. So I completely disagree with you, whether you want to use the term capitalism or whether you want to use the term free market, whatever. If we had a truly unfettered, if we had a truly free market, free of state coercion and violence and monopoly and structural poverty and all that kinds of stuff, if we had a society which is free of all that, I believe, yes, absolutely, I would agree with what you're saying right now. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the big thing for me is that when I'm talking to a mutualist, in all likelihood, if I say to them, the employer who owns the land, who owns the building, who has done trades with them, I don't know, let's say the guy was a peach farmer and he canned peaches for 20, 30 years, spends a large amount of his time, canning peaches and selling them. He's converted his labors into money. This money is not just cash. It's not just a filament. It's something. It's not just paper. It's actually a reflection of the amount of hours that he has spent laboring to create all the things that he's done. And now he uses that to convert it into a building, because he's paid some people to build the building, and he's converted it into a machine, which he paid people in a free trade exchange to provide the metal and the gears and the rubber and the blah, 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 all these different things. And now he owns it. And if he says to you, you can't work here unless you take my deal, he's not a jerk. He's a good guy. He's trying to provide for himself and for his family and for his neighbors, and he's trying to provide an opportunity for other people to join him in collaboration on some effort, and he's trying to create a product which is going to benefit other people. Maybe it's be Reebok's shoes or whatever it happens to be. This guy's a good guy. He's trying to cooperate in a way that is not leaving him disadvantaged and not leaving you disadvantaged. You're both coming up with an agreement as to how to work things out. So why is it that when I offer that as a suggestion that I say to people, all right, I'm going to come into your neighborhood and I'm going to go ahead and give this guy some money to let me have his land, and I'm going to give this guy some money to make me some machines, and I'm going to give this guy some money to do this, that, the other thing. All this money came from something. Okay, it didn't just come from nowhere, assuming that we're not talking about government-involved capitalism. We're talking about real capitalism. Okay, I've made this money somehow by doing something that helped other people. Now I've got money. I'm going to use it. I'm going to buy a building. I'm going to buy some factory. I'm going to buy some machines. I'm going to come out there, and I see an environment where there's a lot of people. We're suffering. We're starving, perhaps. We're living in a situation where the only options for even, young children, young little girls, the only option they have is to try to negotiate a trade between a pimp and a John in order to survive. And I come along and I say to them, hey, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like you to go ahead and make shoes for me using the tools that I've provided. If you'd like the opportunity, come on in. I'll pay you this much in exchange for your making me shoes.
Yeah.
Now, somehow he's an evil fuck. What
well, yeah, that's a good case for the ethical entrepreneur. See, I don't believe that any wealthy person, any entrepreneur, any businessman, I don't believe they're inherently evil fucks. However, I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to accept that many. Excuse me.
You think they're trying to take advantage of the other guy?
In many cases, yes. I believe in many cases there are people that are simply just out to gain and benefit for themselves and not necessarily trying to make beneficial for the entire community or society or whatever.
Sure,
like I said,
absolutely.
I don't think that necessary. I mean, sure, in the situation you're talking about, that's reasonable. I'm sure there are people out there, there are entrepreneurs that simply want to have the most benefit for the most people. But
No, they're about benefit for themselves, but they're providing an opportunity to somebody else. Let me give you another example and see if you can compare the two.
okay.
All right, you want oranges. You have some extra time on your hands, and there's 6 different orange sellers along this row. All right, so you go to the first guy and you say, "How much?" And he says $20 for a pound. And then you go down to the next guy and he says $18 for a pound. And you go to the next guy and he says $25 for a pound. And the next guy he says $12 for a pound. Which one are you going to buy?
The $12.
Obviously. Okay, because you are seeking self-interest and you don't give a rat's ass about how many kids that the guy who's selling it for $25 a pound has. You're a selfish, evil fuck.
That's a pretty solid argument. However, I suppose we are assuming that the person who is selling it for 12 a pound is selling it because he also believes that, he is getting the most benefit, and he is able to live just fine by selling, $12 an orange. And yes, the same can be said for someone who is seeking a job and goes to an entrepreneur. They're both mutually benefiting, and obviously there's nothing wrong with mutual
Exchange where
yeah,
you
mutual exchange. Yeah, obviously, I would never seek to halt that or stop that sort of voluntary transaction. However, it's more of just for me because see, working at, say, Taco Bell, I don't get the sense that the CEO of Taco Bell really cares about me and
Oh, he doesn't.
is yeah, and I feel personally, I do feel obviously because I chose to do this, I can walk away. I don't believe that it's necessarily um, inherently wrong, but I definitely do feel a sense of being sort of exploited in a way.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you might feel exploited. That's fine, but you know what? I feel
Yeah,
exploited when
but
I go on a date with a girl and she doesn't give me anything after I buy dinner.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And so, like I've said before, it's a matter of preference for me. I believe that voluntary transactions are legitimate. I'm not going to seek to stop you from go seeking opportunity and getting a job for a company or whatever. However, personally for me, I would definitely prefer to work in a co-op with other people in a unilateral sense that we're all sort of there for each other.
Oh,
We're
sure.
all
Well, let's that's all fine and dandy, but let's just say for the sake of argument, you have a co-op.
mm,
You can join this co-op and you can become a partner in this particular membership where every single one of you is going to have a share of the profits and the proceeds and so on. You go ahead and you set it up, and at the end of the year, you look at your numbers and you're saying, all right, well, I have enough money to buy. Maybe we don't have money. Let's just forget money.
I
We
like
have
that.
experience acquisition. Over the course of the year, working at your co-op, your experience acquisition is such that your family is pleasantly happy with food. They're perfectly happy with the amount of water and the amount of shelter that is available, but the amount of entertainment is certainly lacking. Now, instead, if you were at the company Kroger, let's say, and working there, you find out that you may not have an equal say. You may not have the influence that you want. You may not have the respect that you want. You may have the ability to be fired at a moment's notice. But now that your family has experienced the result over a year, you see that not only do you have all the food that you want, you have better food. Not only do you have the shelter that you want, you have better shelter. Not only do you have all the entertainment that you didn't have before, but now you have the opportunity to travel, to experience things that you've never experienced before. And the difference in dollar ideas is, I don't know, let's say $20,000 over the course of a year by joining this particular institution where you're subject to the horrors of a hierarchy where somebody could fire you if you don't do what they say. Okay, you make that determination for yourself. Is it more important to you to be master of your own destiny, to be the person who makes the decisions and has the results and enjoys all the fruits thereof? Or are you willing to go ahead and sell out and be taken advantage of in exchange for all the cool things that you're given in response? You're going to be bought off. You're going to be a prostitute. You're going to be a whore for your own enjoyment.
Um, well, I mean, this is a completely hypothetical situation, assuming that a cooperative business model is much less efficient than others. I mean, okay, in this hypothetical situation, I could see how it would be more preferable to go work for Kroger. However, I don't agree with the notion that cooperative business models are inherently inefficient, and I will have
I'm not
less.
making any claim of that. I'm not making any claim of that whatsoever. You know,
Right. And in your hypothetical situation, yes, I could see how it would be more desirable for a person to just go work for Kroger. You know, this whole cooperative thing isn't working out for me, blah blah blah. And now, um, would I would I would I go over to Kroger? That's the question I
oh
suppose you're
yeah,
asking.
yeah, that's
In this hypothetical situation,
sure.
if I'm in working for this co-op
It's
and
a 50% increase in your net result.
yeah, so you're saying if it's going to be more beneficial,
Well,
then I
I mean,
would say
50% in buying power. You could have your own total autonomy. You could have total lack of hierarchy. You could have total control over your life and so on versus selling out. If they're going to give you 50% more, would you do it?
no,
No. Okay.
no,
Would you hold it against somebody if they did? Obviously
no,
not, right?
no, I would not. No.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Um,
so like I said, mutualism is to me it's a matter of preference.
oh, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that the personal choice of security, the personal choice of autonomy, the personal choice of action is not something that I can judge. Each person
Right.
will determine their
Yeah.
own.
I don't believe that ANCAPs at all are opposed to, my preference. I believe, I definitely share the value of the ANCAPs that, um, that voluntary transactions are legitimate, and I'm totally aware that an ANCAP would not infringe on my, preference. Um, it's just the only, it's just a matter of little semantic disagreements, in my opinion. Honestly, I think that ANCAPs and mutualists definitely have a lot in common, and really where they differ are little, you
We'll
know.
give you the best example of the little differences that you can come up with. I mean,
Oh, you want me to give
even
you the best example? Oh, just of
yeah,
little.
or just give me an explanation of what those little things are. Any one of them, just you know, explain what it is that
Um,
different.
well, I mean, like I said, mainly just semantic disagreements. Private
Right.
property,
Other than semantics, I mean, let
other than
disregard
semantics,
the semantics.
other than semantics, I'm honestly, let's see, see, that's the thing. There are a variety of different. I don't know. There are different types of ANCAPs in my opinion. You know what I
Well,
mean?
right, right. You
And
talked about the "and" quote.
yeah. And I think, there are. See, I don't know. I think personally, I think most ANCAPs are really just, individualist market anarchists, and I don't believe that I really differ from them
But then you
like at
chose
all,
to
really. I
take
don't mean
on
to
a
mention schools,
moniker,
but then there are ones that I've talked to that sort of view
the modern
yeah, the
statist
modern, the
slash.
modern, the modern, yeah, the modern model of capitalism, of these big corporations, etc. There are those that would defend that and would say that is capitalism, and we'll still have that in a stateless society. And I
Right.
don't think that represents the beliefs of all ANCAPs at all, or you, or any anyway. But there are ANCAPs that I've talked to that are essentially sort of more more on the more to be grouped with the big business apologists,
Sure. Sure.
quote unquote libertarians, sort of,
And we want to kick those guys in the balls because they're
yeah,
they're they're complete jerks, and we don't buy into anything that they
yeah,
offer.
exactly. And I don't believe, all ANCAPs. I believe that you and I, on the basics of ethics and all that, I believe that we agree, pretty much on most. It's just a matter of we have different preferences of the way we want to live our lives, and that's totally okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You know what? Well, let me tell you. I've worked for a temp agency in several temp agencies, and
Mm-hmm.
these temp agencies found me jobs that I would never have found on my own.
Mm-hmm.
These guys have hooked me up with opportunity after opportunity after opportunity that I would never have found on my own, and I gave them probably 40% of everything that I made in
Mm-hmm.
exchange for doing so.
Yep.
I'm happy to do it. I love,
Then
I don't
that's
know,
fine.
whether it's Kelly or Robert Half International, all these companies, they have done me so well. They have taken care of me. Volt, or what the hell was it? I can't remember. Okay. But bottom line is that opportunity presents itself in various different ways. And if somebody has a price that they want to attach to giving you an opportunity,
Yeah.
are they being a jerk for providing that opportunity and having strings attached to it? No. they're they're being a giver. They are offering something, and you're giving. You're looking a gift horse in the mouth if you say, you know what? How dare you try to profit off of me needing your help? Come on. Uh, the example that I gave on the NCAP versus ANCOM debate forum was, all right. So there's this guy, and he goes wandering off into the woods, falls into a hole. He's trapped in this bottom of this hole, and there's another guy comes along and finds him. They yell back and forth, and bottom line is that the guy that found him says, "Hey, I completely understand you're screwed, and here's what I want. I want half of everything that you own. I want half of everything you own. I'll go ahead and get your rope, and I'll bring you up, and I'll save your life. But if you don't give me half of everything that you own, no deal. I'm just going to go on my merry way." And I guarantee you, all these people, holy crap, they're just angry, angry, angry. How dare this person be such a jerk? Blah, 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 blah. You know, yeah, he's a
Well, yeah,
dork.
he is a jerk. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a jerk. But look, what's your alternative? You don't accept those contracts. You don't accept that this is an opportunity that somebody can take advantage of. Fine.
Right.
You
But I
say
would definitely
never
much.
honor these contracts. What'll happen? The guy will come
But
along and say, "My pain in my ass. I'm not going to bother. Bye. Goodbye."
I I would definitely much prefer that someone else would come along that's a bit more selfless and would want to help me regardless. And honestly, I believe obviously this is a hypothetical situation we're talking about, and it's just an allegory for, you know, what we were talking about prior to this. And I think the average person would definitely rather just pull that person up and not be a total jerk about it. But
Right.
yeah, I know I see what you're getting at. To be honest, if somebody was a jerk to me like that and I was stuck in a well, I mean, there's a part of me that would definitely want to say no. There's a part of me that would definitely want to say, "Screw you, fuck off, dude. You're an asshole."
Right.
I mean, depending on, I've never been in that. Obviously, I've never been in that type of situation. I'm not sure whether what I would actually finally say. I mean,
Well, there are people who
I would probably let him up and then just run away. I'd probably say, "All right, you can have everything I owe," and then just run away. In reality, but
But the thing that I want you to realize is that if we lived in a society where you could guarantee 100% that if the guy helped you out, his contract, his agreement with you would never be honored, would never, ever, ever be honored, he knows that, and he'll probably just say, I'm going to go on my way. Thanks. And
yeah,
you're
I
going to
suppose.
die. You know, we're going to have we have to have a system which gives incentives to people to do the right thing, even though they're being rewarded for being jerks while doing it. All right? There are situations where people are living in squalor, in destitution, where the only opportunity that they have is to sell their bodies in the sex slave market. And then somebody will say to me, oh, you can't go in there and exploit the workers by offering them an opportunity to work in a sweat job. Look, I am coming out there to give them a better option than what they have. They're fucked. They're just screwed right now. I'm coming in to give them an opportunity, and you're telling me I'm an evil fuck for doing so? Maybe not you, obviously, but this anger and hatred towards people who are exploiting people's situations, their circumstances, in order to give them an opportunity that they never had before is bullshit. If every single one of those opportunities was always assumed to never be available, nobody will ever give them, no opportunities will exist, and we will have further suffering.
Yeah, well, yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from with that. See, for me, I would, I would like to just simply change people's sort of,
Paradigm?
yeah, I suppose so. That and there's this dog eat dog paradigm where you need to get up, go out, do this, do that. You need to, and obviously I'm not opposed to the notion that obviously we need to work to survive. That is a fundamental natural thing. Obviously if we all just do nothing, we're all going to starve and die, obviously. However, I would love to change the attitude of society to more of a communal nature. You know what I mean? To more of a, and I believe that that's in order to create social change such as that, it has to start small. So see, my
No,
idea, my
it doesn't have to start small. It doesn't. It doesn't.
no,
That's something that's a misperception. But I want you to finish your thought process if you're not done
okay.
yet, and then I'll
Right.
comment.
Well, see, like my idea of anarchy, many statists will assume that I mean when I say I'm an anarchist that I think that it's a good idea for everything just to be abolished all at once. There's no process involved. Just abolish it all and let it shit fall where it may. No, see, my idea of anarchy is me and some friends going out and saying fuck society, saying fuck your taxes, saying fuck the corporations, etc., and going up and forming our own commune and leading by example, because if people can look at us and say wow, they're doing just fine without the state, they're doing just fine with all us, we can live that way too. I believe in leading by example, not not imposing ideas through force. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and you know what I would say to you is this: is that what you and every ANCOM or AN mutualist that I've ever talked to is seeking is a change in paradigm and a change in understanding about what it is that we as human beings find important.
Right.
What it is
Yes.
that what it is that we value in our inner selves when it comes to our lives and the lives of those that are around us.
I completely
And,
agree with that.
and the thing that's really most frustrating for me is that anarcho-capitalism, what capitalism does is it sells products or services to satisfy the wants of people. And if you want a society that is going to be magnanimous, that's going to provide charity, that's going to provide opportunity, that's going to provide innovation, whether it be research, whatever,
Right.
that's what capitalism is going to provide you if you pay for it. If you are actually willing to step up to the plate and put your money where your mouth is and put your efforts towards that end. And if
Yeah.
you're not willing to put forth the effort to make it something that is real
No,
and
I completely
potentially in
agree.
society, then yeah,
No, I completely agree. And like I said, um, we agree a lot. You know, it's I do believe that if a truly free market would complete, I think we can both agree that a truly free market would definitely provide a gateway and opportunity for a paradigm shift. Obviously, you know,
well, no, the paradigm shift has to occur. If the paradigm shift occurs, then the best possible deliverer of that paradigm shift to make it reality instead of just a mentality is going to be people trying to provide that desire,
yes, yeah,
a competition for who can do it best, and that's what I call it. Um,
right,
it's called competitive cooperation. I have
yes,
to
yeah.
find
I was about to
65
say
other
that
people to
actually.
work my this, and then I have to find 35 other people to do this, and I
Yeah,
make all these different arrangements, and we all cooperate to make whatever it is that you want as the consumer happen.
right. I was actually just about to say that competition and cooperation are not necessarily, opposed to each other. That competition and cooperation can be complementary to each other. I believe.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's probably gonna be hard for us to have a very lively debate because we seem to keep agreeing. Um,
No, no,
but
but you know what? We've pushed some points here, and I think that it's good.
yeah,
But unfortunately, we are kind of out of time. But I
that's fine.
want to go ahead and give you some last words, and then I'll make some commentary. But um, the thing that I really want to make clear is that you and I share a goal, and I would say that any anarcho-communist, every single person on the planet probably, except for like the sociopaths and psychopaths,
Yeah,
you know, really, what do we want? What do we want? I'd like to be happy, and you know what? If other people are happy too, that's kind of cool. I like that. Um, I don't see any real reason why I should rejoice in other people being
yeah,
unhappy. There are some
right.
people who are dickheads who want other people to be unhappy. Well, fine, fuck them. I don't really care to entertain ideas of people wanting unhappiness in other people's lives. But, when it comes down to it, we all want happiness. We all want, you
Yeah,
know, satisfaction and people to not starve to death, people to not
right.
live in squalor. So
I yeah,
the best system for me to deliver that is not some sort of, oh, let's all take a vote and figure out how it's going to happen, or let's all
oh,
have a particular small segment or group or whatever. I want to have as many ideas and many possible solutions brought up to the table, and then we all give the solution that we think is the most successful
hmm,
our support via money.
that's a good point. Yeah, I definitely agree that I think we all share a common goal, and that is freedom and happiness. I want to be happy, like you just said. Um, I completely, yeah, I completely agree with that statement, and I believe that rather than simply just like we do in the debate group, it seems to happen a lot where we're just name calling or we're straw manning.
Yeah.
No, I believe
What good
we
does
need
that
to,
do?
yeah, we need to, yeah, sure, we might disagree on some things, but we all share sort of, we can all find, I believe we can all find common ground, you know, and I believe that it's doing nothing for us just bickering. We should be trying to unite and to trying to come up with solutions, and trying to come up with a pathway towards a common goal and something that we could all be, happy about, something we could all agree on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
to that end, I think that we've at least contributed a little bit more to the concept and given people a little more understanding of what it is that we're talking about. Um, Now, I would encourage anyone that is viewing who happens to be a statist who believes that we can't achieve these things without a government. What you're advocating is a single solution to a problem instead of letting a multitude of solutions compete to provide the best solution. And I guarantee you, unless you're really, really lucky, you're going to be wrong. So, if any case, I do want to thank you, Brian, for joining me, and thank you for joining us at the Anarchist Experience. My name is Robert Kruger, and I am glad to have you join us. Take care.
Yeah, you as